Is up, y'all? Welcome back to episode 75 of That's No Moon Pod. The time has finally come. The Acolyte Star Wars TV series on Disney Plus finally got released. Two-episode drop, and I'm going to give y'all my review, overall thoughts, first impressions. There was also some weird news that also dropped within the past week about Kathleen Kennedy talking about the fans again, and there was this supposed leak of what the original plans were for the Kenobi trilogy movie that later got turned into what we got into the Kenobi TV series. But let's just start off with the Acolyte, my first impressions, what I liked, what I didn't like. What I do like so far is that it doesn't feel like it's tied down from having to tie into anything that's supposed to come next. It feels like it's trying to do its own thing, trying to tell its own story without having to worry about just tying in too much with the Skywalker saga or the sequel trilogies. There's no worry about any of that. They're able to kind of do this thing to where they should be more free just to tell whatever story they want to tell within this time period, since it takes place so long before the prequels and all that. The first episode starts off with the fight scene between Carrie Ann Moss. Um, I'm pretty sure everyone by now has seen this fight scene. I know it was online already, pretty much the full length fight scene, other than what eventually happens. And if you haven't seen the episodes yet, you've been warned. Full spoilers ahead because I feel like even though there's not a whole lot to spoil yet, just to be safe, I'm letting y'all know right now. But the fight between Amanda Stenberg's character, May, and Carrie Ann Moss's character, they throw down in this bar or whatever, and Amanda Stenberg's character, she's hunting down these Jedi for whatever reason, right? And they have this hand to hand combat, and it kind of gives you that matrixy fight style choreography, which is cool to see. You don't really see too much of that in modern filmmaking anymore. A lot of the fight scenes nowadays are kind of just that handheld camera taken style fight choreography, and this kind of has a little bit more of that old school kung fu style fighting movie. Um, but what eventually happens, right? They're fighting, and May, Amanda Stenberg, she's has these daggers or whatever, and she's trying to stab Carrie Ann Moss with them, and she eventually throws a knife at the bartender down below, and meanwhile, Carrie Ann Moss uses the force to stop the blade before it kills this innocent bartender, which leads her vulnerable to May throwing another dagger at her, stabbing her in the chest, and winds up killing her right off the bat. And you could tell that they're trying to go for that whole Game of Thrones, no one's safe in this TV show. We're going to kill off one of the main actresses that we've been promoting this whole time leading up to the show. We're just gonna kill her off right away. That way, it makes you think that anyone that you may like in this show is probably not gonna make it out alive. And so, right away, we just start off with that shock, and you could tell that's what they were going for. They all want us to be like, you just killed off Carrie Ann Moss within the first 10 minutes of the show. Um, and I'm not completely sure how I feel about that. I, again, they used Carrie Ann Moss so much in the build up to the show and the promotion. She's in pretty much every trailer. Um, and just overall, the hype around the show was kind of centered around partially because Carrie Ann Moss was going to be a Jedi. And I don't think this is going to be the last time we see her in the show. From what I remember from the trailer, there's this sort of flashback type of scene where Lee Jong Jae, Soul, which I'll get into in a little bit, they look kind of younger at a certain point in the trailer. So we're definitely going to be seeing Carrie Ann Moss again in the show. It's just not going to be the modern version of her. It's going to be some flashback. Um, and kind of getting into Amanda Stenberg's character, May slash Osha. I like what she's doing so far. They're kind of having this who did it type of story point to where, okay, Amanda Stenberg's character, she's on this freighter or whatever, and she has this job kind of just fixing or help maintaining these ships, kind of like an R2 unit would do when they go outside of the ship to help with repairs of the hyperdrive or the fuel generators or whatever. And they're trying to make you think, right, that we just saw her kill Carrie Ann Moss, but then once the Jedi's roll in and they're trying to tell her, we got to bring you in because we have evidence that you fit the description of this person that wound up killing this Jedi. And Madeline Stenberg, she's like, I didn't do it. It wasn't me, yada, yada. And to me, right away, it kind of felt like it was, I knew what was going to happen to where, okay, I know this isn't the person that they're looking for. It's most likely her twin, which it eventually becomes to be true that it was never Osha, it was her twin sister May, who was supposed to have died in a fire with their family on her home planet when they were children. And that's kind of how Osha got brought into the whole Jedi world with Soul, Lee Jong Jae's character, who I think is easily the best part of the show so far. I think he feels like the most Jedi out of everyone so far in the show. Just his presence on screen when he's just the way he delivers his lines and his demeanor and his just overall just presence on screen, you really feel it. I thought he did such a great job in Squid Games, and it really showed off his acting ability. And this one, he's fully speaking English, and I totally buy that he's this stoic Jedi who's been through it all at this point, and just overall, just kind of he has that essence to him, that Jedi essence that I think a lot of people that portray or try to portray a Jedi in shows or movies sometimes it doesn't come off like that, but I think he's doing a great job so far of being able to buy into the fact that he's this highly respected Jedi. Um, so the story goes on, right, to where we get to Coruscant. They tell Li Zhangjae that his old apprentice Osha may have killed this Jedi, Carrie Ann Moss, and he of course doesn't want to believe it because he knows that she's a good person, and for whatever reason, she just decided to leave the Jedi Academy and not become a Jedi. But they still gotta go and figure out what exactly happened. Go find Osha and question her. Meanwhile, she's crashing down on the freighter from where the Jedi who came to question her, they're trying to take her back to Coruscant. The ship that she's on, for whatever reason, doesn't have any Jedi on it, even though they think that she killed the Jedi, but instead they just throw her on this shipping craft to where there's other criminals on there with her, and they're all trying to escape, and they come up with this plan to sabotage the whole ship, and they're able to escape on the pods, leaving her to figure out a way to get off the ship her own self. And this scene really kind of showed off that budget that they were talking about leading up to the show. The show supposedly had over $180 million budget, which is pretty wild for a TV show, and that more than doubled what the budget was for the Kenobi show, which got a whole lot of people pissed off, um, myself included, to be honest. But I'll kind of talk a little bit about that later on, whenever I kind of talk about the whole Kenobi uh, movie leak. But overall, the whole scene with her on the ship crashing, you could really see the budget coming in. I think a lot of the sets in the show so far, the CGI, some of the practical effects too, look really good. It doesn't look volume heavy at all. It looks like they're shooting on sets, they're shooting on locations a lot of times, and you can really feel that so far in the first two episodes, which I like. Um, but eventually, when she crashes down, Soul and his new Padawan, played by Daphne Keene, and they bring on this other Jedi Knight who took her in at the beginning of the episode. Yord is his name. Yord so far is probably my least favorite character so far in the show. Uh, I don't know what it is about him, but kind of like what I was saying with Li Zhangjae, he just doesn't feel like a Jedi to me so far. He could totally, turn the page and completely make me have a whole different opinion about him, but so far, just the way he kind of portrays a Jedi, the way he looks too, as well. Um, they give him like a whole Kylo Ren shirtless scene for whatever reason too, which I thought was kind of weird. But it's something about his hairstyle I feel like is a little too modern for the character. It might sound a little nitpicky, but to me, I mean, he's like a 40-year-old dude in real life. I don't know how old he's supposed to be in this show, but he kind of has like this younger style of a hair cut to me, and it doesn't look like a Jedi to me at all. Maybe if he was 10 years younger, I think he'd be able to pull it off a little bit more, but I just think the choices that they've kind of made with his character so far, I'm not totally buying it just yet. Um, but once Yord and uh, Daphne Keene, Soul's Padawan, they wind up finding OSHA, crash down, and they finally bring her in. She's saying she didn't do it. It was my twin, who you all thought was dead, but she's alive. Soul believes her, and now they're on the hunt for May, the evil twin. Uh, and again, I knew right away that's kind of what was going on because I remember there was some kind of leaks that came out a while back talking about these two twins that were separated when they were younger, and then one becomes good and one becomes evil. So right away, that kind of snapped back into my mind. So I wasn't really too shocked by anything. And then once the whole episode kind of gets rolling from that point on, they're all together. They gotta find May, and they wind up going to the planet to where they believe that she's on. And this is kind of where we see that final shot at the end of episode one, where we get to see kind of who's running the whole show with May, who's kind of pulling the strings. The guy from the trailer with the red lightsaber and the Knights of Ren style helmet with the smiley face going across. Uh, Again, because we haven't seen him in action yet. We don't know who this person is. We don't know how powerful he is, other than that clip from the trailer to where he kind of just force pushes that whole forest outwards toward the Jedi. Um, but we don't know too much about this guy. Um, I wasn't fully bought in with the voice of the character. He's kind of telling May these whole things about the Acolyte, don't use weapons, or because you're not gonna be able to kill a Jedi with the weapon, or yada yada. But I don't know. It's just something about his voice. It kind of sounded a little too generic. Um, but I do remember I kind of felt that way a little bit with Kylo Ren the first time I heard his voice through the helmet. But eventually, Kylo Ren's voice really grew on me. So I'm hoping it kind of does the same thing with me with this guy. Um, and then episode two rolls in. Um, we're getting more of May, and then kind of seeing the behind the scenes of what she's trying to do. She's trying to kill this other Jedi who's been force meditating supposedly for 10 plus years or whatever. And they have this funny scene where she's trying to stab this Jedi in this random temple, and he's just floating up in the ground and complete meditative state. And she's trying to stab him, but she can't because there's like this force field around him, and he's completely not there. Well, he is there, but he's in a whole different, you know, realm at this point. Um, and it was just funny trying to see her try to figure out a way to penetrate this force field that this Jedi has conjured up around him. And she winds up trying to get this poison made from her boy so that way she can wind up killing him. And then Soul and Yord and Soul's Padawan and OSHA roll in, and they're trying to stop her before she winds up killing another Jedi because supposedly she's got to kill these four specific Jedi for whatever reason, and Soul being one of them, which we later see Soul and May have that fight scene that we've seen also from whether it's the trailer or I believe they even released the full fight scene online as well, like they did with the Carrie Ann Moss fight, which I'm kind of curious why exactly they chose to do that. But they get to the temple to where May's trying to kill this Jedi who's been meditating with the poison. They get there. For whatever reason, the Jedi decides to stop meditating and willingly drinks the poison to kill himself. and May takes off. OSHA comes in and discovers the body, and then for a second they think that she did it, and thankfully Yord was following her when she kind of broke off from the path and was able to kind of back her up and say, I saw it, she didn't do it, it wasn't her. And meanwhile, May's still out there roaming around, so they're trying to find her. That's where we eventually get the fight scene between May and Soul, which I thought was good. I don't know if it was better than the Carry On Moss fight, but again, they kind of have that same kind of matrixy kung fu style with the wires and all that. And Soul's just kind of pretty much schooling her, not being able to get touched by any of her blades or whatnot. And they kind of corner her and they're about to arrest her. And she uses this kind of force push on the ground to raise up all the dirt. And she gets away from them. And OSHA is kind of waiting in an alley and she sees May hijack the speeder. And they kind of have like this eye to eye moment to where they probably haven't seen each other for who knows how long at this point, and OSHA has a shot to hit her with the set the stun blast, but I'm pretty sure she misses on purpose because I don't think, again, because at the beginning of the episode, Soul hands OSHA this blaster just in case it comes to the point to where if she needs to take a shot to be able to take her down. She's used a weapon before. She was trained to be a Jedi, so she shouldn't be missing shots like that point blank, but I'm pretty sure she decides to miss on purpose to kind of make it seem like she got away somehow, but really deep down inside, she didn't have it in her to, take out her sister and wind up bringing her in to be questioned by the Jedi and probably go to prison for the rest of her life for killing these Jedi at this point. So she obviously does it on purpose to let her escape for her sister. And yeah, episode 2 was definitely a little bit weaker in my opinion than episode 1, even though there was still some cool moments here and there. Um, the episode ends up we go on this planet to where the supposed Wookiee Jedi lives, which we see a quick glimpse of him force pulling these random guys blasters from them and they take off running because they're scared, and then that's kind of where it ends from there. So next episode I'm assuming we're going to kind of get that whole full on episode where we get to see the Wookiee Jedi in action or in live action at least, which would be sweet. um but yeah, first two episodes I like it so far, but again I'm not blown away by it. And to be honest, this is kind of how I figured I would be feeling with this show. Just kind of leading up to it, there was nothing that was really making me get overly excited, or there wasn't anything that I saw from the trailers or from what I heard from any of the showrunners or the actors that was really kind of just grabbing me and making me feel excited about the show. Um, but I went into it with full on clear mind. I didn't have any um, expectations, or I wasn't going into it with an agenda. I never do with these types of things with Star Wars or really anything that I watch, to be honest. And again, yeah, I like it so far, but I guess I'll kind of go into a little bit of stuff I don't like a little bit more. Um, Daphne Keene's character, I think she's a really good actress. She killed it in Logan, and for whatever reason, they decided to give her this weird looking makeup to make her seem like this creature or this alien or whatever. And it's not fully working for me. Just her overall look. I like her character so far and what she's doing with it, but I kind of wish that we would just kind of get that face paint or whatever off of her because again, in Logan, she was a lot younger in Logan, but she has like this ability to really use her facial expressions and she could be really intense and show her emotions. And I think it's just gonna really dwindle down her acting abilities in this show with all that makeup on her face. Um, Again, I already talked about the whole Yord guy. He's not fully doing it for me so far. Um, and there's this character named Vernestra. She's kind of the one telling Li Zhangjae's character what he can and cannot do for whatever reason. She's kind of the head honcho for some reason. Um, the actress is doing fine, but again, it's kind of what I was saying with Daphne Keene. The She's like this green character. I don't know if she's supposed to be an alien or something or what species she is, but the makeup on her kind of is throwing me off a little bit. It kind of looks like I don't know. It just doesn't look that well done to me. It looks kind of cheap for whatever reason, and this show is anything but cheap because I think again the set designs, the locations, for the most part, the costumes look pretty good. The music is really good so far, but for whatever reason, the Daphne King and this Vernestra characters makeup design just isn't doing it for me, and the whole Yord character isn't doing it for me either. I'm trying to figure out what may really be going on um, with the whole twin things because I just don't want it to lead into that same old path to where one twin is good, one twin is bad, and at the end of the show, we get to the point to where they're gonna have to make a decision whether it's one of them or both of them. Most likely the evil twin, and she's gonna have to come to face with the fact that this isn't who you really are. Come back to the light, take out your master, who's this evil guy, and live happily ever after, or whatever, or wind up sacrificing yourself for the greater good. I'm hoping that's not the case because I'm literally saying this and it's happened so many times. It's happened so many times in Star Wars as well. It's kind of just this played out story to where this person falls to the dark side and winds up. It's the whole Kylo Ren thing, is why so many people, including myself, was upset at the fact that Kylo Ren's this guy who's just this savage killer who has this temper and is just he's willing to he's willing to kill his own father Han Solo, and then you wind up trying to make us really care for the guy at the end of the sequel trilogy when it's like, no dude, you freaking killed Han Solo, you killed your dad. Like, I'm not gonna I like you as a character, yeah, for sure, but overall as a person, you're not a good guy. Like, I can't forgive you for that. And so I'm hoping they don't have this whole kind of redeem story arc at the end, but it's probably what's gonna wind up happening, to be honest. What I'm hoping though, I'm kind of leaving in this small portion of hope to where maybe it's not fully twins. Maybe they could switch it up to where May, Amanda Stenberg, it's all kind of in her mind, and she has like this split personality type of thing. I'm hoping that winds up being the case because I think that'd be a lot more intriguing and just a way better way to tell a story of someone who, if you're going to redeem them, or even if they can be redeemed, I'm hoping that's kind of the route they take towards just this kind of Jekyll and Hyde type of story point instead of just going for the cliche story arc. Um, but I'm excited to see what happens next. Overall, I think the reactions have been mixed to say the least online. Um, but I've seen a lot of people really liking the show so far. But I've also seen a lot of people saying that they don't like it. And I think at this point, that's kind of where we are with Star Wars. Sadly, it's going to be really lopsided. Um, but I'm hoping episode 3 gives us something to really cling on to and make us feel like, okay, maybe we got something here. Let's keep the ball rolling. I really need to see more of this main bad in the show. I need to, who is this guy? Where did he come from? And hopefully it leads into something bigger down the line with him as well. I don't want him to be this kind of evil character that's hiding in the shadows that winds up gets easily defeated in the end, and you never really feel like he was ever really a threat to anyone. I really want them to make this guy feel like, you know, he could take out anyone at any time. And I'm hoping that they're able to do that with this character. Um, but y'all let me know what y'all thought so far. The Acolyte episodes 1 and 2, 8 episode series. Episode 3 drops next week. Um, I guess I'll kind of lead into the whole deal with the budget and kind of how I feel with this whole ordeal with the fact that this show, The Acolyte, got over $180 million budget for an 8 episode, 30-minute per episode TV show when the Kenobi series only had like an 80 or $90 million budget. And you're talking about Kenobi, Ewan McGregor, Hayden Christensen, Darth Vader. Right there and then, that should just give you the green light to be like, how much money y'all need? Here you go. Make it crazy. Go nuts. But for whatever reason, they decide to dumb everything down, cut the budget significantly because originally the Kenobi show was supposed to be this trilogy movie that had basically already been written, and Ewan McGregor was already signed on to do it. He was excited about it, and they decide to water down the whole story points completely, pretty much, and turn it into this Reva Little Leia show instead of really focusing about who the show is based off of. Um, Supposedly, the whole kind of story points or script leaked from what the original plans were to be for the Kenobi trilogy movie. And if you haven't heard of any of these story points or haven't seen the video online yet, I highly recommend you go watch it. But at the same time, it is so infuriating to where the guy making the video, he goes over everything that the Kenobi trilogy was supposed to be and goes over all the story points. And you're listening and you're watching this video and you're hearing all this information on what could have been from the Kenobi show or Kenobi movies, and you're just like, how do they not go through with this? Whether or not they decide to make it into a trilogy movie, you could have at least adapted all of it and made it into what, a 2 season, 3 season top TV show, but just take everything that was already written and just convert it over to the TV show instead of pretty much scrapping it all and giving us what we got with the Kenobi show. And I know, I'm sure there's people out there that really love the Kenobi show, which is great. But when you hear everything in this video that talks about the leaks of the Kenobi trilogy, it just completely overshadows everything that what we got in the Kenobi show. There was supposed to be like this whole thing with um, Kenobi and Commander Cody. They kind of have like this, how they describe it, like a lethal weapon type of buddy cop kind of banter, to where Obi-Wan's on Tatooine looking over Luke, but he's disconnecting himself from the Force. They talk about at one point Cody sneaks behind Obi-Wan and he kind of takes him out real quick and is about to stab him, but really he's kind of teaching him a lesson, to where he's trying to let him know, like, hey, you're getting too disconnected from the Force. You still have a job to do here, which is protect Luke, and you also got to protect yourself, because I'm not even a Force user, and I was able to sneak up behind you and pretty much almost kill you. So you got to get, your mind right and get your powers back. Otherwise, you're starting to slip here, old man. And Riva was still gonna be in the movie, except she didn't know that Anakin was Darth Vader. She winds up finding out that Anakin is Darth Vader, but it's because Obi-Wan winds up telling her that, because she's working for Darth Vader still, and Darth Vader is trying to find Obi-Wan because he obviously knows that Obi-Wan is still out there, and he's one of the two living Jedi still roaming around somewhere who are a threat to the Empire, to him and the Emperor. And they talk about this cool scene where Darth Vader tells the Emperor this much, that we gotta find Obi-Wan. He's still a threat. He's one of the only threats to the Empire. And Palpatine kind of throws it back at him, to where, yeah, that's why you should have killed him when you had a chance on Mustafar. And then Darth Vader claps back, talking about, well, the other Jedi that's still out there who's a threat, Yoda, you failed to take him out as well. So what's up? And they kind of have like this back and forth, that tension between them that we've always seen within the novels and comic books. And um, there was going to be a certain scene where Obi-Wan goes into this cave, and he kind of has like this force vision, kind of like the Empire Strikes Back, to where Luke winds up finding Darth Vader, but Obi-Wan goes into this cave and he winds up being on Mustafar, and he sees this figure, the lightsaber, and he thinks he's reliving the whole battle with Anakin, but really it ends up being Luke, and he ends up having this battle with Luke on Mustafar in this scene, and it kind of is telling Obi-Wan that he's kind of being a little too overprotective of Luke, and if he watches over him too much, it's gonna wind up leading Luke down a dark path and eventually turn into the dark side. So that's kind of, it ties into the whole thing with the original trilogy to where Obi-Wan and Luke didn't seem like they had a close relationship at all. Like they hardly ever had seen each other, and that was the reason why Luke was kind of able to find his own path, and eventually destiny kind of leads them to wind up coming together again and setting Luke on his own path to becoming a Jedi. And Darth Vader and Obi-Wan have a battle still, and Obi-Wan slashes Vader's helmet, and that's kind of where Darth Vader gets like that scar on the top of his head that we see in Return of the Jedi. And Obi-Wan's trying to still, you know, get him back on the light side, but then he realizes that Anakin's gone. It's just Darth Vader now at this point. And Obi-Wan somehow escapes, and Reva tells Vader that he ended up killing Obi-Wan, but Vader, for his own reasons, winds up killing Reva right there and then, or failing pretty much because he knows that she didn't really kill Obi-Wan. Um, and again, I highly recommend, if you haven't seen that video, go watch it. It's highly infuriating at the same time to what could have been. I just don't understand in the thinking of, okay, you're not gonna make a movie. Why not just turn all of that script and material into a 2, 3 season TV series on Disney Plus? Why did you have to completely scrap everything from it and give us what you gave us? Darth Maul was supposed to be in the movie as well. Um, there's just so many cool things and ideas in that script that just make you think, what if, man? Like, this is what we should have gotten. And this kind of leads into what I was talking about at the beginning of the video, and what Kathleen Kennedy had come out and said recently regarding the fans. And of course, it obviously had a negative reaction to it, which I think honestly is justified. Um, I'll give you a quote here from Kathleen Kennedy. She's kind of talking about fandom and kind of storytelling within Star Wars right now. She says, "My belief is that storytelling does not need to be." Oh, I'm sorry. She says, "My belief is that storytelling does need to be representative of all people. That's an easy decision for me. Operating within these giant franchises now with social media and the level of expectation, it's terrifying. I think Leslie has struggled a little bit with it. I think a lot of the women who step into Star Wars struggle with this a bit more because of the fan base being so male dominated. They sometimes get attacked in the ways that can be quite personal." And Leslie kind of had her own quote about a little bit of the same thing. This is a Leslie Headland quote, who is the showrunner, director of The Acolyte. She says, "As a fan myself, I know how frustrating some Star Wars storytelling in the past has been. I've felt it myself. I stand by that." She's talking about the fans, regarding just Star Wars fans. She says, "I want to be clear. Anyone who engages in bigotry, racism, or hate speech, I don't consider a fan." And just going off what Leslie said right there, I completely agree that if you're any of those things, um, your opinions really don't matter. If you're coming into anything with any kind of hate specifically towards a person's race or gender or whatever. None of that is right. And I completely agree with what Leslie Headland said right there. But going back to what Kathleen Kennedy said, talking about how her belief is that storytelling needs to be representative of all people, and how that's an easy decision for her, and how she thinks that um, women who step into Star Wars struggle with kind of the hatred or the expectations more than men do. Uh, kind of saying how she feels like the women get attacked more within the fan base. And I just think that's a lot of BS from Kathleen Kennedy. Um, a lot of BS seems like what Kathleen Kennedy says. Um, there's so many women within Star Wars throughout time that people have praised and have loved. And that's characters, that's directors, that's everything. There's so many women that have been involved with Star Wars from the dawn of time, and the actress who was in the Greedo costume just recently passed away, R.I.P. Um, but these comments from Kathleen Kennedy don't make any sense to me at all. It's like, did Ryan Johnson or J.J. Abrams or even freaking George Lucas, you don't think that they faced the same amount, if not more, hatred towards them with what they did? George Lucas with the prequels, or Ryan Johnson with The Last Jedi, or J.J. Abrams what he did with Rise of Skywalker. Those three men, I'm sure, faced just as much, if not more, hatred than what these women are facing with the criticisms of their shows. And I think the fans always have a right to speak their minds and be honest on their opinions on what they're watching and the product that these companies are giving us. And for Kathleen Kennedy to say that storytelling needs to be representative of all people and how that's an easy decision for her, I feel like that's something that's easier said than done. Um, I kind of feel like that's the whole point of why we watch so many of these shows and movies, to kind of escape our world and be placed into someone else's world and be put into some other person's situations that I myself or you watching this have no idea what it's like to be that person. I'm not watching Shogun hoping that, man, I hope there's some Hispanic Latino character that I can, really connect with on a personal level, or I hope there's this, whatever, whoever you are. If I was that person, I'm not going into whatever thing I'm watching hoping that I'm being represented in this movie or TV show. Otherwise, I mean, every show would have to have all these certain agendas or points that have to be made, and that's just going to dwindle down the story that the writers and storytellers want to tell. So Kathleen Kennedy's comments make no sense. They're easier said than done. Obviously, these people that get all this hate, whether it's warranted or not, that all depends on the product that they deliver on. And if people aren't digging it, then the fans have a right to speak their mind on it. And obviously, some people speak their mind differently than others. I am never one to advocate for hate speech or anything like that. I always think you got to keep it as civil as possible. Try to obviously get your point across, but there's no reason why there should be anything nasty said. Um, but yeah, if you're trying to put all these fandoms in a box to where you think every person that doesn't like a show or a movie that you put out is racist or sexist or is just a hateful male or whatever, it's just not true. And all those people don't represent the whole fandom. There's more to all of us. And just to kind of put every fan in a box like that and kind of trying to make a point to where you think that the women are getting hated more than the men, it's just not true. And it all depends on what they deliver and what they bring to the table at the end of the day. But again, and everything that Kathleen Kennedy seems to say just doesn't make sense. I always wondered, I've never gone to Star Wars Celebration, but I know that she always makes an appearance. And I always wondered, I'm sure it doesn't happen, but in the NFL draft, the commissioner, Roger Goodell, every time he walks out, the fans boo him. It's kind of like a laughing gag. It's gone on ever since he's been the commissioner. And it's kind of like a tradition at this point. And I've always wondered, when she walks out on stage at Star Wars Celebration or anything, do they boo her? Or I'm pretty sure they wouldn't allow that. But I always, that thought always kind of crossed my mind for whatever reason. But let me know what y'all thought of those comments by Kathleen Kennedy and Leslie Headland. Let me know what y'all thought of the Acolyte show so far. Again, I highly recommend y'all go watch that video, even though it's really infuriating about the Kenobi leaks for the trilogy movie that we sadly lost. Leave all y'all's comments down below. Like, comment, subscribe. Posting new release comic books, variant covers on my IG and Snapchat still for free. Go check them out. Links will be down in the description. I'm glad that the show's finally come out though, because right now in June, we're really going to start rolling into a lot more content, a lot more things to talk about instead of just these rumors here and there. Every week for the next couple weeks for the Acolyte, we're going to be getting House of the Dragon this month as well. Be stoked to be talking about that. Just more and more things will be rolling in as we get deeper into the summer. But until next week, y'all stay safe, and I'll catch y'all on the flip. Peace.